Nobody in Seoul Station understood why one of the most feared men in South Korea was kneeling on the wet floor with tears in his eyes. Hundreds of people had stopped walking, phones were recording, bodyguards looked horrified. And in the middle of all the chaos, a 6-year-old girl smiled innocently and said, "Thank you, Uncle. My shoe doesn't hurt anymore." But none of them knew that 30 minutes earlier, the little girl and her older sister had been completely alone. And none of them knew that one simple question was about to change 4 lives forever. Rain pounded the streets of Seoul that evening. People rushed through the station trying to escape the storm. Nobody paid attention to the 2 young girls standing near the entrance. 9-year-old Kamsi Okafor held a paper bag tightly against her chest. Inside the bag was medicine. Medicine their mother desperately needed. Beside her stood 6-year-old Muna, who suddenly stumbled and almost fell. "Oh!" Kamsi caught her immediately. "Muna, careful!" The younger girl looked down and sighed. "It's loose again." Her shoelace had come undone. Kamsi knelt and tried fixing it. Once, twice, 3 times. The knot kept slipping apart. Muna looked at her sister's trembling fingers. "You're tired." "I'm okay." "No, you're not." Kamsi forced a smile. "I'm fine." But she wasn't. For 3 days, she had barely slept. Their mother, Amina Okafor, had collapsed from exhaustion while working. Now she was hospitalized. There were no relatives nearby, no father, no grandparents, nobody, just the 2 sisters. Muna's voice became quiet. "I miss Mommy." Kamsi swallowed hard. "I know. Mommy always ties my shoes better." Those words almost broke her, but she remembered what their mother always said. "Strong girls don't give up." Kamsi smiled. "Exactly." Then Muna remembered something. "Mommy also said kind adults help children." Kamsi looked around. Most people ignored them completely. Some walked past without even noticing. Then she spotted a tall man stepping out of a black luxury car. 4 bodyguards immediately surrounded him. Everyone nearby moved aside. Nobody dared come close. But Kamsi didn't understand why. To her, he simply looked like an adult. Taking Muna's hand, she walked straight toward him. One bodyguard noticed them. "Hey, move back!" But Kamsi politely bowed. "Excuse me, sir." The man slowly turned. His face carried no emotion. His eyes were cold. Kang Min-jae, the silent dragon, the mysterious businessman whose name carried rumors throughout Seoul. Nobody interrupted Kang Min-jae. Nobody approached him. But Kamsi looked directly at him. "My sister's shoelace keeps opening." She pointed toward Muna. "Could you please help us?" Silence. Even the rain seemed quieter. One bodyguard blinked in disbelief. Another looked ready to faint. Had these children completely lost their minds? Then Muna smiled. "My sister tried many times. She's tired. Can you help me, mister?" And suddenly, Kang Min-jae stopped hearing the world around him, because 25 years disappeared in an instant. He saw another little girl, his little sister, Suyan. "Appa, tie my shoes." The exact same words, the exact same innocent eyes. Pain exploded inside his chest. For years, he had buried those memories. For years, he had convinced himself he no longer cared. But memories never truly die. Without saying a word, Kang Min-jae removed his coat. One bodyguard hurried to take it. Then, to everyone's shock, he knelt on the wet floor. Gasps spread throughout the station. People stared in disbelief. The silent dragon was kneeling before a child. Min-jae carefully cleaned the dirty shoelace with his handkerchief. Then he tied a perfect double knot, exactly the way he used to do for Suyan. When he finished, Muna stomped her feet happily. "It works!" Then, before anyone could react, she hugged him. Every bodyguard froze. Nobody touched Kang Min-jae. Nobody. Yet this little girl wrapped her tiny arms around him without fear. "Thank you." For the first time in years, he forgot how to breathe. Nobody had hugged him in a very long time. Not friends, not family, not anyone. Slowly, something impossible appeared on his face. A smile. His bodyguards looked at each other in complete shock. They had worked with him for years. They had seen anger. They had seen cruelty. They had seen power. But they had never seen him smile. Ever. Muna giggled. "Kamsi, I told you he looked nice." Kamsi bowed repeatedly. "Thank you, sir." Min-jae finally spoke. "Where are your parents?" Muna answered immediately. "Mommy is sleeping in the hospital." His eyes narrowed. "And your father?" Kamsi lowered her head. "We don't know where he is." He understood that silence. He had lived that silence. "How long has your mother been hospitalized?" 3 days. "And you've been alone?" Kamsi nodded. "We go to school. We visit Mommy. We buy food. We do homework." Muna proudly added, "My sister makes noodles." Something painful twisted inside Min-jae. 25 years earlier, he had done exactly the same things, trying desperately to protect his little sister, trying desperately to save his family, and failing. One advisor stepped closer. "Boss, we're late." Min-jae ignored him. "What is your mother's name?" "Amina Okafor." "And which hospital?" Kamsi answered quietly. Min-jae stood immediately. "Take me to her." Both girls blinked. "Really?" Kamsi asked. Muna smiled brightly. "See? Mommy says God sends helpers." As they entered the vehicle, one advisor whispered nervously, "Boss, this isn't our problem." Min-jae stared silently through the rain-covered window. Then he answered with a voice so quiet it sent chills through the car. "People said the same thing when my family needed help." Nobody dared speak again. But unknown to everyone inside that vehicle, another pair of eyes had witnessed everything. And somewhere in Seoul, a dangerous man replayed the video over and over again. Then he smiled. Because after years of searching, Han Do-sik believed he had finally discovered Kang Min-jae's greatest weakness. A family. The ride to the hospital was strangely peaceful. Muna sat beside Kang Min-jae as though she had known him forever. Meanwhile, his bodyguards looked as uncomfortable as men attending their first kindergarten class. Muna studied him carefully. "Uncle Mister." One of the bodyguards almost coughed. Min-jae looked down. "Uncle Mister?" She nodded seriously. "I don't know if you're uncle yet because I don't know your name." For the first time in years, one corner of Min-jae's mouth lifted. "My name is Min-jae." Muna gasped dramatically. "That's easier than my math homework." Even one of the bodyguards accidentally laughed. Everyone immediately looked at him. The poor man straightened up. "Sorry, boss." But Min-jae simply looked out the window. He didn't scold him. He didn't say anything, which somehow frightened the bodyguard even more. Muna leaned closer. "Can I call you Uncle Min-jae?" The entire car became silent. Nobody asked Kang Min-jae personal questions. Nobody. Yet after a few seconds, he quietly replied, "If you want." Muna clapped happily. "Yay, now I have an uncle." Kamsi smiled for the first time that day. The smile was small, but Min-jae noticed it. And somehow, seeing that smile gave him a strange sense of relief. When they arrived at the hospital, Kamsi rushed toward room 608. As soon as they entered, Amina Okafor sat upright in panic. "Kamsi, Muna, where have you been?" Then she saw the men in black suits. And finally, she saw Kang Min-jae. Her face immediately turned pale. Every immigrant in Seoul knew his name. Rumors surrounded him. Some called him dangerous. Some called him untouchable. Amina instinctively pulled her daughters close. Min-jae noticed the fear immediately. He turned toward his men. "Outside." Within seconds, the room became quiet. Only Amina, the 2 girls, and Min-jae remained. "What do you want?" she asked nervously. To her surprise, Kang Min-jae bowed slightly. "Your daughters asked me to tie a shoelace." Amina blinked. "What?" Kamsi quickly explained everything. By the time she finished, tears had already formed in Amina's eyes. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't mean for them to trouble anyone." "They're not trouble." His answer came immediately, almost too quickly. Even he seemed surprised by it. Amina lowered her head. "I had no choice. I tried calling people. No one answered. I couldn't leave the hospital. I didn't know what else to do." Muna climbed onto the bed beside her mother. "But Mommy, Uncle Min-jae fixed my shoe." Amina looked confused. "Uncle?" Muna nodded proudly. "He said yes." For some reason, Min-jae didn't correct her. That night, after they left, Amina cried quietly. Not because she was afraid, but because kindness had come from the place she least expected. The next morning, she woke up to complete confusion. Doctors she had never seen before entered her room. Specialists reviewed her files. Additional tests were scheduled. Her medications changed. Then the nurse smiled. "Good news. Your bills have been settled." Amina almost dropped her cup. "What?" "Everything has been paid. There must be some mistake." "No mistake. Someone requested anonymity." Amina already knew. At the same time, inside his headquarters, Kang Min-jae sat behind his desk. One advisor finally spoke. "Boss." "What?" "The men are worried." "About what?" "About you." Min-jae slowly raised his eyes. "What does that mean?" The advisor swallowed. "You've changed." Another added, "The organization has rules. No attachments. No weaknesses. No emotions." Min-jae stood up. The room immediately became silent. "For 25 years, he said quietly, "I thought power was enough. Nobody moved. When my mother needed help, nobody came. When my sister died, nobody came. When I buried them," his voice hardened, "nobody came." Several men lowered their heads, because none of them had ever heard him speak about his past. "I built this empire because I never wanted to feel helpless again." He looked around the room. "But tell me something. If power cannot protect people, what is it worth?" Nobody had an answer. That evening, Min-jae visited the hospital again, and the evening after that, and the evening after that. Soon, Muna began expecting him. Whenever he arrived, she ran toward him. "Uncle Min-jae!" His bodyguards had stopped panicking by then. Nothing surprised them anymore. One evening, Muna held up a drawing. 3 stick figures. "Who's this?" Min-jae asked. "Mommy." "And this?" "Kamsi." "And this one?" "You." Min-jae paused. "Where are you?" Muna pointed at the smallest figure. "I'm holding your hand." He looked away immediately, because his eyes had suddenly become wet. Kamsi noticed. Amina noticed too, and for the first time, Amina understood something. This man wasn't helping them because he felt sorry for them. He was trying to heal. One evening, while Muna slept, Amina quietly asked, "Why us?" Min-jae remained silent. Then he answered honestly, "Because once, I had a little sister." "What happened?" Several seconds passed. "I couldn't save her." Amina saw the pain in his eyes, pain that had lived there for decades. She spoke gently. "Sometimes people blame themselves for things they couldn't control." His voice became quiet. "You don't understand." "No," she replied softly, "but I understand grief." Before either of them could continue, Muna suddenly sat upright in bed. Half asleep, she stretched her arms toward Min-jae. "Uncle!" Without thinking, he moved closer. The little girl hugged him and immediately fell asleep again. Amina smiled, and for the first time in many years, Kang Min-jae smiled back. Neither of them noticed the man standing outside the door, a hospital cleaner, or at least that's what he appeared to be. Hidden inside his pocket was a phone, and inside that phone were photographs. The hugs, the smiles, the affection. Minutes later, those photographs reached Han Do-sik. He studied them carefully. Then he laughed. So the rumors are true. One of his men looked confused. Boss, are we certain? Han Do-sik placed the photographs on the table. Look at his face. Have you ever seen Kang Min-jae smile? No. Exactly. His smile slowly disappeared. Find out everything about those girls. Because if they matter to the silent dragon. He leaned back in his chair. Then they belong to me. And for the first time in many years, Han Do-sik prepared to start a war. Within 2 weeks, something impossible happened. People around Kang Min-jae began noticing changes. Not small changes, real changes. He started leaving work earlier. He canceled unnecessary meetings. He stopped yelling at his subordinates. Once, one of his men made a mistake that would normally have earned him a week of punishment. Instead, Min-jae simply sighed. Fix it and don't repeat it. The poor man almost cried. Rumors quickly spread through the organization. Some believed their boss was sick. Others thought he had secretly fallen in love. Nobody guessed the truth. The truth was 6 years old and talked too much. One evening, Muna climbed into the back seat of his car and asked, Uncle Min-jae? Yes? Were dinosaurs rich? One bodyguard burst out laughing. Another slapped him immediately. Behave yourself. Muna frowned. It's a serious question. Min-jae looked completely serious. I don't know. Muna nodded thoughtfully. I think they were poor. Why? Because if they had money, they would have built houses. Even Min-jae laughed. Not a small smile, an actual laugh. The bodyguards nearly drove into another lane. Kamsi covered her face in embarrassment. Muna! What? I'm helping science. Amina couldn't stop laughing. For the first time in years, the apartment was full of joy. One evening, Kamsi approached Min-jae while Muna slept on the couch. Uncle Min-jae? He looked up from the book he wasn't actually reading. Yes? Thank you. For what? For helping Mommy. For helping Muna. For helping me. Min-jae remained silent. Then Kamsi asked something that caught him off guard. Were you lonely? He slowly lowered the book. Why do you ask? Because sometimes when Muna hugs you... She hesitated. You look like you're about to cry. Those words hit him harder than any enemy ever had. Children noticed things adults ignored. He finally answered, Yes, I was lonely. Kamsi smiled softly. You're not anymore. Before he could reply, Muna suddenly sat upright. Still half asleep, she pointed toward Min-jae. No stealing my uncle. Everyone burst out laughing. Even Min-jae. Amina watched quietly. Every day she understood him a little more, and every day she became more grateful. But somewhere else in Seoul, gratitude did not exist. Only hatred. Han Do-sik stared at photographs spread across his desk. The apartment, the school, the hospital, the family. One subordinate finally spoke. Boss. Yes? We investigated everything. And the girls aren't related to him. Han Do-sik frowned. What? The mother is Nigerian. The girls have no connection to Kang Min-jae. Then explain the photographs. The man hesitated. We don't understand. Han Do-sik slammed his fist onto the table. People don't risk everything for strangers. Another man quietly replied, Maybe he cares. Han Do-sik laughed coldly. Cares? Men like Kang Min-jae don't care. Everyone has selfish reasons. He stared again at the photographs. No, those girls are important. And important things can be used. 3 days later, Amina recovered enough to return home permanently. Muna practically danced through the apartment. Home! She hugged her pillow. She hugged her doll. Then she hugged Min-jae. You have to visit every day. He raised an eyebrow. Every day. Yes. That's impossible. Muna crossed her arms. Then every 2 days. He smiled. We'll negotiate. That evening, after the girls went to bed, Amina sat beside him. You know, he looked up. Muna really loves you. Minjae remained quiet. So does Kamzi. And maybe, she smiled. So do I. He looked surprised. Not romantic love. Not that. But trust. Respect. Family. Amina continued. When I first saw you in that hospital room, I was terrified. I know. I thought you had come to hurt us. And now? She smiled. Now I think God answered my daughter's prayers. For several seconds, Minjae couldn't speak, because nobody had ever called him an answer to a prayer. His entire life, people had called him many things. Dangerous, cruel, heartless. But never that. The next afternoon, Kamsi stayed late at school for a project. Amina went downstairs to collect groceries. Muna remained inside the apartment. She was coloring pictures. Someone knocked. Delivery. Muna remembered what her mother had taught her. Who is it? Package for Amina Okafor. I'm not supposed to open the door. Your mommy asked me to bring medicine. Muna hesitated. Medicine? Mommy's medicine? Slowly, she unlocked the door. The moment it opened, a gloved hand covered her mouth. Everything happened in seconds. The apartment door closed. By the time Amina returned upstairs, the groceries slipped from her hands. Muna? Silence. Muna? The living room was empty. Her coloring book lay on the floor. So did her favorite doll. Amina's scream echoed through the building. At school, Kamsi smiled when she saw a familiar black car outside. Uncle Minjae! But the moment she saw his face, her smile vanished. Something was wrong. Very wrong. He knelt before her. Kamsi, where's Mommy? She's safe. And Muna? Silence. The little girl's face turned pale. No. Her voice trembled. No. Uncle Minjae. Tears filled her eyes. Where's my sister? For 25 years, Kong Minjae had feared only one thing. Failure. And suddenly it was happening again. He held Kamsi's shoulders gently. Listen to me. We're bringing her home. I promise. Back at headquarters, absolute chaos erupted. Phones rang nonstop, cars moved, orders flew across the room. One advisor stared in disbelief. Boss? We're activating everyone? Everyone. Even our overseas contacts? Everyone. What about tonight's meeting with investors? Cancel it. The ports? Shut them down. The casinos? Close them. The room fell silent, because never in history had Kong Minjae stopped his empire. Not for money, not for politics, not for enemies, but now, an entire underworld was moving for one little girl. Inside an abandoned warehouse near Incheon, Muna slowly opened her eyes. She looked around in confusion. Then fear entered her face. Mommy. No answer. Kamsi? Nothing. Tears immediately rolled down her cheeks, and hugging her doll tightly, she whispered the only name she trusted. Uncle Minjae? Meanwhile, Hondo Sik received a message. Target secured. He smiled, but his smile slowly faded when another message arrived, then another, and another. His men looked nervous. Boss. Hondo Sik frowned. What? The silent dragon has shut down the city. For the first time in years, Hondo Sik stopped smiling. Hondo Sik read the messages again, then again, and again. The color slowly drained from his face. Impossible. One of his men swallowed nervously. Boss. Every port connected to the underworld has stopped operating. Another added, our partners aren't answering calls. A third man looked terrified. 3 of our warehouses have already been raided. Hondo Sik slammed his hand against the table. Over one little girl? Nobody answered, because they were asking themselves the same question. Meanwhile, inside his headquarters, Kang Min-jae stood before a photograph. It was old, worn, and slightly faded. His younger sister Soo-yeon smiled back at him. One of his oldest advisors approached carefully. In 15 years, he had never seen his boss look so broken. "Boss." Min-jae didn't turn around. "We found the vehicle." His eyes lifted immediately. "Location? An abandoned warehouse near Incheon." Silence. Then Min-jae quietly picked up his coat. "Prepare the cars." The advisor hesitated. "Should we inform the police?" Min-jae looked at him. His voice was calm. Too calm. 25 years ago, I waited for people to save my family." His eyes moved toward the photograph. No one came. He put on his coat. "This time, I'm coming myself." Before leaving, he stopped. Then he said something nobody expected. "If anything happens to that child..." His voice broke. "I don't think I'll survive it." Silence filled the room because everyone finally understood. Muna wasn't his weakness. She was his second chance. Inside the warehouse, Muna sat hugging her doll. Her eyes were swollen from crying. One kidnapper sighed. "Poor kid." Another shook his head. "Don't start feeling guilty now." Muna suddenly spoke. "My uncle Min-jae will come." The men exchanged glances. "You're very confident." She nodded. "He always keeps promises." The words strangely unsettled them. Then, a loud noise echoed outside. The kidnappers jumped. Another sound, then another. Panic spread immediately. "We've been found!" Inside his vehicle, Kang Min-jae heard it. And then he heard something else. A small voice. "Uncle Min-jae!" His entire body froze. For one terrible second, he heard another voice. Soo-yeon, his little sister. The sister he couldn't save. Then Muna screamed again. "Uncle Min-jae!" He ran. Not walked. Ran. His men stared in shock. In 15 years, they had never seen Kang Min-jae run. The warehouse doors burst open. Muna saw him and immediately threw herself into his arms. He caught her so tightly that tears began rolling down his face. "They said you wouldn't come," she cried. His voice trembled. "I promised." "You kept your promise." Those 4 words shattered something inside him. For 25 years, he had lived with guilt. For 25 years, he believed he had failed the people he loved. But this little girl trusted him completely. Behind them, Han Do-sik slowly appeared. "So it's true." His voice carried bitterness. The mighty silent dragon brought an army for his daughter. Min-jae slowly turned. "My daughter?" Han Do-sik laughed. "Stop pretending. The photographs. The hospital visits. The smiles. The hugs. You nearly destroyed your empire for them." Min-jae looked down at Muna, then back at Han Do-sik. "No." Han Do-sik frowned. "What?" "She's not my daughter." Confusion appeared on his face. Then why? The warehouse became silent. Even Han Do-sik's men listened. Min-jae gently wiped Muna's tears. Then he answered, "Because once upon a time, I had a little sister." His voice cracked. "And I couldn't save her." Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. "This child asked me to tie her shoelaces." Han Do-sik stared in disbelief. And that was enough. The words echoed through the warehouse. One of Han Do-sik's own men slowly lowered his weapon, then another, then another. Their leader looked around in shock. "What are you doing?" One man answered quietly. "We didn't agree to hurt children." Another added, "Boss, you've gone too far." Within seconds, Han Do-sik stood alone, defeated by his own cruelty. Months later, Han Do-sik disappeared from Seoul forever. Nobody ever heard from him again. But something even more shocking happened. Kang Min-jae changed. He funded scholarships. He paid medical bills anonymously. He opened support centers for immigrant families. People couldn't understand what had transformed him. Only 4 people knew the truth: Amina, Kamzi, Muna, and Kang Min-jae himself. One evening, after the girls had fallen asleep, Amina sat beside him. "You loved your sister very much." He nodded. "I failed her." Amina smiled gently. "No." He looked at her. "You gave another little girl the ending your sister never received." Tears filled his eyes, because nobody had ever said that before. 5 years passed. Kamsi grew into an exceptional student. Amina recovered completely. And Muna? Muna remained Muna, talkative, cheerful, and impossible to silence. One afternoon, Kamsi stood on a stage after receiving a national academic award. Reporters surrounded her. "Who inspired you the most?" Everyone expected her to say her mother. Instead, she smiled. "My mother taught me strength, but someone else taught me kindness." The audience became curious. "Who?" Kamsi looked toward the back row. There sat Kang Minjai. No bodyguards, no fear, no empire, just peace. "The man who tied my sister's shoelaces." People turned. At that exact moment, Muna jumped out of her seat, and just as she reached the stage, one of her shoelaces suddenly came undone. The audience laughed. Muna looked down dramatically. "Oh no." Then she turned toward one person. "Uncle Minjae!" The entire hall watched as Kang Minjae walked forward. Without hesitation, he knelt, just like he had done years earlier, just like he had promised. He tied the shoelace carefully. When he finished, Muna smiled. "I told everyone you always keep your promises." Kang Minjae looked up. A smile appeared on his face. Then he quietly replied, "Some promises are forever." And for the first time since losing his own family, Kang Minjae finally understood something. Love doesn't always arrive through blood. Sometimes, it arrives through a simple request. "Could you help us tie our shoelaces?" And sometimes, that is enough to heal a broken heart. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who still believes kindness can change lives. Because somewhere in this world, someone may be waiting for their second chance.